Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to March Mystery Madness. This is a venerable BookTube event here in the month of March that is being hosted by Elizabeth at Lizzie Faye Loves Books and a whole bunch of other great channels. I am also a co-host for March Mystery Madness, where we concentrate on mystery novels. I love reading mystery novels. I love reading about mystery novels, love thinking about them. I am strongly considering writing one for Camp NaNoWriMo. I'm now March is almost halfway done, so I am heavily into the planning aspect for that, trying to figure out what I want to do. Do I want at Camp NaNoWriMo? You don't have to reach 50,000 words, and I don't know. It seems like trying to reach anything smaller than that would be kind of a waste of time, a little exercise. So maybe I'll set that goal for myself anyway, and just write 2,000 words a day. But first I have to figure out what I want to do, and that is causing me to read the murder mysteries that I'm reading with a very forensic eye. But the partial theme of March Mystery Madness for 2023 is lather, rinse, repeat, and I'm emphasizing the repeat by going and rereading books that I have read, either once or many times, either recently or a very long time ago. And the last couple of books that I read, baby, are you licking? Frida, are you licking, baby? There you go. She just gets into this zen where she just keeps licking. The last few books that I've read have been, whether they build themselves as that or not, they have been police procedurals, which is a kind of murder mystery where it's the actual day-to-day working mechanism of how the cops solve the crime that is the whole crux of the story. It's not the inventiveness of the crime. And it's certainly not any really smart amateurs who come in and help the cops. It's just police work. It's get to the scene of the crime, lock it down, send away the forensic evidence for analysis, talk to everybody involved, find out what their alibis are, check on the alibis, check on the bus tables, check on the store receipts, find out which alibi is weakest, put a little pressure on that, pursue it a little more, didn't come up with anything, got to talk this morning, got to have a meeting about our progress, then we'll do a little more of that same thing, maybe stake out a building, maybe follow somebody on the street or in a cab, then we'll have another meeting, discuss our progress a little more. It's the exact opposite of the wild flights of independent intuition that you get in Hercule Poirot or Miss Marple or Sherlock Holmes, and it has a following. And I don't mean to belittle it because I am also in that following. I've read plenty of police procedurals that I really, really like. Some of my favorite regular characters from the golden age of mysteries are inspectors with Scotland Yard or whatnot. But the last couple that I read seemed very institutional. They seemed very institutional, and they are. I'm not trying to mischaracterize them. It's just that, unbeknownst to them and no fault of theirs, I said this yesterday. I think I said it the day before, and you already know it, so I don't need to say it at all. But I will stress it just because newcomers might find this video. I am not meaning to make this a political discussion, but in the 21st century, in America, most citizens are far more sensitized to police abuses. Far more sensitized. In the 20th century, we had grainy video footage of a large group of police officers with batons and their feet and their fists relentlessly beating a man named Rodney King. Relentlessly beating him. They would tell him to stand completely still, and then they would beat him a rock-cracking strong strike on the back, on his shoulder blade. You can't stand still. You can't be still just neurologically if someone does that, unless you're unconscious. So they would give him an order that he couldn't follow, and when he didn't follow it, they would beat him some more. In the 20th century, we saw that, and L.A. burned. The 21st century, it's been much, much more prevalent. Cops wear body cameras. They have dash cams. Everybody has a cell phone. So all of a sudden, instead of hearing that some young black man was out for a jog or was just minding his business at home and was shot to death, either by citizens that think they're going to get a parade down Main Street or by cops who think they're not even going to get disciplined, instead of just hearing about that, in the 21st century, we have seen that over and over and over and over and over again with almost no accountability. The amount of accountability for the murderers and the torturers involved has been going up only because the evidence has been increasingly incontrovertible. You simply cannot argue with the fact that George Floyd was murdered, that he was executed, that the cold-blooded, absolutely relentless murderer who had murdered before, who was caught on camera intentionally killing him, knew what he was doing and didn't care if he was being filmed. There was no way to avoid that, and the whole country burned. The whole world came out in protest. Those sorts of things, they might not have the immediate systemic change that we all want, but they raise the sensitivity level. If nothing else, they do that. Which means I don't think it's possible to read a police procedural that's very institutional, like the last few that I've been reading, in the 21st century, innocently. I don't think it's possible to do that. The only way you could possibly do that, I think, would be if the police were set in a rural district in the early 20th century, like in a lot of the Golden Age murder mysteries, where I don't so much mind. I don't know if it was that, if it was one too many dash cam photos that I remember when I'm reading these things, but the last couple of police procedurals really bugged me. They weren't all that good. Maybe that helps. Maybe if I'd read a really good one, it would have been. But they bugged me. So I decided last night that the mystery that I read would be something completely different. I would still stick with the repeat business. I would still go to a thing I've read before. But I decided to get away from the police. And I went to Cape Cod. I went to Cape Cod, which is, for those of you who don't know your American states, Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where I live, the greatest state in the Union, is a rectangle on the eastern seacoast. It's not very big. It's not very big. Most people in the state of Texas would consider the entire length of Massachusetts a reasonable distance to drive for Arby's. And drive there, get some Arby's, drive back. Massachusetts is not very big. It's a rectangle. But it juts out into the ocean in a fishhook of land that won't be there in 50 years. And that fishhook is Cape Cod. And it has been a storied place for a long time. And it's viewed as a kind of a getaway. Right now, it is. For the last century, it has been basically a vacation getaway of one kind or another. People live there year-round, just like they live in Venice year-round. And there's an author, Phoebe Atwood Taylor, decided that about 100 years ago, that she would set a murder mystery in Cape Cod. And that she would feature the rustic old locals, the Macintosh-wearing, battered hat-wearing old locals who talk like country yokels. Because that, at the time, was a thing that people prized about Cape Cod, that there was this kind of, what they actually called it, that they had the nerve to call at the time, an indigenous culture. Actually, the Wampanoags would have something to say about that, those people being an indigenous culture. But it was the old-timey Cape Cod. That people got a sense, 100 years ago, they got a sense that old-timey Cape Cod was threatened by modernity, that it was going away, and that it had a folksy charm to it. You could still catch glimpses of that on Cape Cod. Some people on Cape Cod will very much still try to market that. And Phoebe Atwood Taylor wrote a story about Cape Cod. And she embodied that old-timey, folksy wisdom Cape Cod in the figure of a main character, A.C. Mayo, A-S-E-Y, A.C. Mayo, who's had an extensive life. We don't learn that much about it. Everybody knows him in the town of East Weset. The fictional Cape Cod town of East Weset. Everybody knows him. And he knows everybody. He knows all the adults. He knows all the family histories. He knows all the kids. Everybody likes him. He's cool. The word would not have crossed Phoebe Atwood Taylor's mind, and it doesn't cross A.C. Mayo's mind, but we would consider him cool. He's one of those people that just, well, if you had to move forward a little, think of Robert Parker Spencer. Someone who only the bad guys don't like. Everybody else likes him. In one way or another, everybody else likes him, and he is omnicompetent. He's definitely not a cop, and that's what I wanted. East Weset has barely any association with cops. They barely have a police force. And it's largely, a Barney Fife Keystone Cops operation. A.C. Mayo uncovers problems, investigates them, solves them, because everybody in the community goes to him for advice. They go to him for help. He's that kind of a guy. so it happens outside. It happens completely away from any kind of police procedure, which is exactly what I wanted. And so I've read all of these things. I wish that I had them all in hardcovers with dust jackets. Once upon a time, they were made that way. In those 1940s paper rationing type pulp paper pages. So you have the little hardcover that's as light as a feather because the paper is really low quality. Those have held up really well in the last 70 years. Those have held up. Those hardcovers have held up really well. And I am sure that someday I will find somebody will dump the whole run of them at the Brattle Bookshop, and then I'll have them. That's what I want. And the reason that I want them, that I want that so bad, is because the AZ Mayo, the most popular AZ Mayo reprint line, was done by the Foul Play Press, and they're awful. I don't know how you can make that out, but these are awful. These are awful quality. You simply cannot read these things without destroying them. I had a whole set of them just about 10 years ago. And I read through a lot of them, not all of them, but as I was reading through them, the spines were cracking, pages were coming out in islands and chunks. I encountered the same problem with, for instance, Robert Gulick's Judge D mysteries. I think it might have been Foul Play Press, now that I think about it. The last whole run of the Judge D mysteries is the same way. They're lovely to look at, but you cannot read them. Not in bed, not holding them in one hand, not turning pages industriously. They'll fall apart on you. Unfortunately, I only have a couple of AZ Mayo novels in those original hardcovers, so I'm going to have to make do. This is Banbury Bog, which is from 1938. And this Foul Play Press book, it was reprinted in the 80s, I think, or the 70s? 1966. Oh, no, this was done in 1987, Foul Play Press, which I'm told is a subdivision of the Countryman Press in Woodstock, Vermont. So Woodstock, Vermont has a lot to answer for because these are not well-made books. But I managed, and I read Banbury Bog, which is not the first, nor the second, nor the third, nor the fourth AZ Mayo. So you don't need to read these in any order at all. All you basically need to know, and Phoebe Atwood-Taylor, of course, doesn't tell you, and the editors didn't want to commission anything new for these books because that would have driven up the price, so they don't tell you either. All you basically need to know is what you'll get in the Wikipedia entry, or what I've just told you. This is an old-timey Cape Cod. This is a Cape Cod from the 30s. This is a Cape Cod before cell phones, satellite dishes, TV, anything like that. This is an old Cape Cod that was less accessible than it is now. Cape Cod is a half-hour bus ride from the New England Aquarium here in Boston. It's easy to reach now. Once upon a time, it wasn't. So it was very much a vacation destination, that sort of thing. That's all you really need to know. That, and also that this AZ Mayo guy, you'll know it anyway. You'll know it the minute you get into any one of these books. Phoebe Atwood-Taylor really doesn't need to tell you. But you'll get right away that this AZ Mayo guy has stature in the community. I know that is an old, antiquated idea, but once upon a time, it could happen. It still happens in certain towns that I know of, including in Vermont. It is possible for you to have stature in your town. If you have stature in your town, it's not that you're a bully, or that you know where the bodies are buried, is that people know you're reliable, they know you're trustworthy, and they know you can see through a plank of wood if you have enough time. And everybody knows that about AZ Mayo. So they confide in him. He's when there's trouble, people automatically want to know what he thinks of it, and he gets involved. And that happens in this book very naturally. I loved it. I loved rereading it. I'm of course, that's not a big reveal. I'm a sucker for these books, this whole series. I absolutely love them. I wish I had them all in format that would survive. They don't appear to exist. Many of them don't appear to exist as ebooks. And even so, in this particular case, an ebook would be great because, of course, an ebook is indestructible. But in this case, those old hardcovers are what I would like. I would like the whole of the 1940s run of AZ Mayo hardcovers with dust jackets. I would also like the whole of the run of the 1940s hardcovers of Charlie Chan, which are also really great. I don't have any of those. But anyway, Phoebe Atwood-Taylor knows exactly what she's doing with these books. She is setting atmosphere. The atmosphere has to be important. Otherwise, what differentiates it? Otherwise, AZ Mayo just becomes a glorified busybody. She has to convey old-time Cape Cod. And she can do that in two ways. One, by evoking the natural world, and two, by bringing in rubes. she has to bust in rubes from Boston or wherever who don't know Cape Cod ways, so that the crusty old idiosyncratic Cape Cod natives in the stories can laugh at them and also take advantage of them. And she starts that right away at the beginning of this book. I want to read you two passages from this book. The first one is right at the beginning. This is the beginning of chapter 1. It was while Tabitha Sparrow waited for the Banburys to come that the fog arrived. The minute she sniffed it, Tabitha groaned. Like other weather-wise Cape Codders, she knew that this fog meant trouble. This fog was going to cause grief by the smell of it. This was not the slinking, sinister fog that invariably left a drizzling rain in its wake, nor was it the type which East Weasett, borrowing a phrase from carpet cleaning of another generation, referred to as a tea leaf. A tea leaf was a regular June fog that slipped in the evenings when the sun went down and slipped out the next morning at sunrise, leaving behind a salty tang in the air and a fresher, cleaner shade of blue in the sky. This fog, billowing in so boldly, blotting East Weasett off the map, was the variety Tabitha had learned during her 50 years to detest. This was a stayer, with a capital S. And no one who had not experienced the damp, leisurely course of an East Weasett stayer could possibly imagine what that meant. Almost anything could happen during a stayer, and it usually did. Tabitha sniffed again at the fog and closed the east door. Tomorrow that east door, along with every drawer, cupboard, and window in her house, would be stuck tighter than a drum. Matches would refuse to light. Spots of mildew would break out on the linens. Sheets would be clammy. Beds would be damp. Even clothes hung carefully away in closets would begin to look crinkly and shapeless. Sooner or later, the dampness would do something to the electricity, and then the plumbing and the water pump would stop. Every sentence would be punctuated by the mournful bellow of the foghorn on Weasett Point. Every 5 minutes, that thing would bellow. Every 5 minutes, 12 times every hour, 24 hours every day, until the fog went out or until the horn gave out, as it occasionally did. Then they started the siren, which was worse. That is how this book starts, with an East Weasett stare. The fog blows in, and when the fog is on the town, things happen. The Banburys that we've been told about here is Mr. Banbury and his family. And he has come to East Weasett, allegedly to vacation, but also because he's trying to quiet the frustrations in his own family. But he's a wealthy man, and he can't help but look around him and see that Tabitha Sparrow, for instance, is really hoping that the fog does not put off the Banburys because she needs them to rent rooms in her house. She could really use that windfall. Well, Mr. Banbury doesn't need long before he sees that all of East Weasett could use that. And he goes to the Board of Selectmen, and he does everything by the book, and he starts to maybe see if there's anything he can do to help. Designates a car as a welcome wagon, and tries to see if there's anything he can do to help. Can he help out East Weasett? Any investments that he can make? Any contributions that he can make? Any events that he can sponsor? Anything like that. You get the sense in this book that although he is a wealthy carpetbagger from Boston, he's a nice guy. And the town very much thinks that as well. The town starts to embrace him completely. Not just because he's a nice guy, but also because he represents much-needed cheddar. Until, well, you can see the cover, right? There is a get-together put on by the selectmen. And at the get-together, delicacies, including tart pastries, are provided to 200 people by Banbury's largesse. And they have dust in them and also a little bit of arsenic in them. And people start to get sick, which is very much the concern, not only of AC Mayo, who knows better than to have, food at a rubber chicken dinner, but also of the town's crusty doctor, Dr. Cummings, who's a major character in the book. And immediately, the town starts to turn on Banbury. And then a dead body is found in the welcome wagon. It's a selectman. It's a dead selectman. And all of a sudden, the whole of East Weasett is now convinced that Mr. Banbury, instead of being a savior, is the devil himself. And AC Mayo is caught up in it all, not because he cares about town gossip, but because there's a dead body. And everybody wants to know what he thinks about it. They want to know what you make of this. AC Mayo, as I've mentioned, this type of really indispensable small-town country guy, can see through a plank of wood in enough time. And everybody knows that about him. They know he's going to see things they don't see. Of course, that doesn't have to be a guy, right? That is very much also Jessica Fletcher from the Murder, She Wrote novels. and TV show. It doesn't have to be a guy. That's Miss Marple. The thing I'm trying to talk about is that it's the exact cure for a cop drama. Because in a cop drama, in a police procedural, it doesn't matter whether the cop has any great insight. They aren't known to anybody. Nobody knows anything about them. It's the machinery that will solve the crime. Backed by the force of the state. It's the machinery that will do it. And that started to bug me. I wanted to come to a world, a murder mystery world, where it was a person, a man or a woman, who would solve the crime. And I want to read you another part here, because this is Dr. Cummings. Dr. Cummings is very irate. He's hilarious. He steals the book. He's very irate. He's very voluminous, and he is a perfect stalking horse for A.Z. Mayo, who is soft-spoken and doesn't talk much, and who, because Dr. Cummings doesn't see as much as he says, A.C. Mayo, who sees much more than he says, has to explain things to him, and that's invaluable for a murder mystery writer. I'm currently grappling with a whole bunch of possibilities like that for the novel I'm thinking about writing or starting in Camp NaNoWriMo. There has to be an efficient method of delivering exposition in a book. Yesterday we saw an inefficient method. There has to be an efficient method. Well, Dr. Cummings is a perfect gimmick for that. But I want to, this is after the body has been found. And I think it's fairly self-explanatory. I'm not going to go too far into the book in reading, because I don't want to accidentally spoil anything. But I think I can make sense of this to you. Because Dr. Cummings is voluminous here. He is voluminous. A body has been found, dead, in a car. And the doctors are examining the body. Dr. Cummings has some help. But Cummings says right away, this guy wasn't poisoned. He doesn't have any cyanide in his body. He doesn't have any arsenic in his body. He doesn't have any poison in his body. So if you're thinking that he was somehow done in by one of those tarts, no, he wasn't. And AC knows that already. He figures that out already. Dr. Cummings says, I still can't see why you thought he was drowned, AC. Why didn't you think that he'd been hit over the head with a bucket full of water? The car was dry, AC pointed out, and his shoulders and coat and the rest of him was all as dry as a bone. And there was something about him that just made me think drowned. I've seen drowned people before, and he looked drowned. Cummings shook his head. My God, this is a mess, he said. Drowned in a car. If you figure this one out, you're going to be good. And AC says, there's nothing to figure out. Someone cracked him over the head and knocked him out first, and then they let his head dangle in some water. They could have stuck him head first in the ocean, or they could have held him over a puddle, as far as that goes. The point of the matter is he didn't drown by himself and then got into the front seat of the welcome wagon. He was drowned and he was put there. That part is figuring is simple, Doc. Oh, is it? Says Cummings. I see. What do you mean, someone murdered Abner Grove? That's the selectman. Quite so. But where? Your guess, Azy told him, is as good as mine. He might have been drowned there on the bog, or it might have happened 50 miles away. Nonsense, Cummings said promptly. If he was drowned somewhere else, why would someone stick him in that wagon and drive him over there to the bog? Acy got up from the table and walked over to the window. He's looking out at the fog. It wouldn't have been such a bad idea, he said. It would have been a pretty bright idea. They hit him over the head, they drown him, they put him in Banbury's welcome wagon, and they drive him in the wagon to Banbury's bog, as close as they can put him to Banbury's house without being seen. Well, you get the idea. It throws a lot more limelight on the spot that Banbury's already in. Now see here, Cummings said, you're not standing there and insinuating that someone trying to involve Banbury in Grove's death. They already have, Macy said gently. They've already stuck Grove in Banbury's wagon on Banbury's land. What does that mean? Cummings demanded. They might have stuck him in your car or my car and driven him to your front yard or mine. But that wouldn't involve us, would it? No, AC said. I don't know as it would. In a way, except that we'd be asked a lot of questions. With Banbury, it's different. Yesterday, they called him a fine man. Last night, they called him a poisoner. There's no reason they can't go one step further today and call him a murderer. Cummings snorted. That's the most ridiculous thing I ever listened to in my life, AC. Listen, I like this man, Banbury. I wouldn't believe he was involved even if he had a motive for killing Grove. I wouldn't believe it even if he had the opportunity. Even if someone saw him stuffing Grove's head into a bucket of water, how can Banbury be involved? The tide, AC said, was high around 11 last night. My God, what does that have to do with it? Well, it's got quite a lot to do with it. It means that the welcome wagon got driven along by the bog before 11 o'clock last night. Then the tide came in. washed all away with marks of feet and trampling all around. The ground was still squidgy and damp when Banbury and I came. If someone killed Grove there, by the bog, and the tides washed away all the marks and clues that might have been, and clues is C-L-E-W-S, because Phoebe Atwood Taylor wants AC Mayo to seem like an unaffected rube, even in the spelling of the words. uh, if someone drove him there and left all traces of them has got washed away. And I noticed last night that the steering wheel was sort of shining and bright. If there were any fingerprints, you can bet they've been taken care of. Grove must have been drowned right there at the bog, Cummings said. He must have. Think of the chances anyone would take otherwise driving his body there. That white truck is conspicuous enough. Anyone would see it and notice it. Why? AC said. There's nothing unusual in the sight of that vehicle whizzing around. People is used to it. Grove could have been put on the floor. Somebody else could have driven without causing any comment. Besides, with all the back roads over that way, you could get to that bog without going near the main road. Point is, Doc, this. No one's seen Abner after 8 o'clock last night. I asked a lot of questions after I left. Lord knows every man Jack was up last night, either being sick or looking after someone who was. Nobody I talked with had seen Grove after 8. But everyone I spoke with told me that Banbury had been seen hunting Grove after supper, and they all said he was boiling mad and itching to get his fingers on Grove. I can understand that part, Cummings said. Under the circumstances, if the tarts you've made are turned out to be dusted with arsenic, you'd go to the selectmen, wouldn't you? And wouldn't even you just be a little bit sore? Probably, AC said. But think this out, Doc. I got to the bog house around 10:30. Banbury had been hunting Grove for over an hour, by himself. See what I mean? You mean, Cummings said, that if someone takes it into his head to accuse Banbury of killing Grove, Banbury hasn't got an alibi, because Banbury was reputably tearing after hunting Grove with fire in his eye. And if the welcome wagon was driven to the bog before high tide, oh, I see what you're aiming at. But Banbury hasn't any motive, AC. Suppose Banbury was mad, and suppose he was hunting Grove. Lord, if he wanted to vent his wrath on a selectman, he had 3 to choose from. Why pick Grove? Banbury wouldn't have had any motive for killing Abner Grove. It wouldn't seem so, said AC, but don't tell me those fools, those dolts, those jackasses, don't tell me that the intelligentsia of Weesit has provided Banbury with a motive. Because AC Mayo knows the gossip. According to my cousin Jenny, AC said, who stuck her ear to the party line for me at 6 this morning, Weesit has a motive. Seems, Doc, that Grove was a kind of Galahad. Cummings spluttered into his coffee. Galahad, that watery-eyed, weak-jawed, vacillating creature? He wasn't quite that bad-looking, AC said, but it seems this morning that Grove was the fellow who's been standing up to Banbury when Banbury tried to overstep the bounds. What bounds? Just bounds. Just what Jenny told me. She didn't specify what bounds. It seems that yesterday, on their way back from Boston, Grove and Banbury had what amounted to a fist fight. Don't splutter so, Doc, you'll choke again. That's the story according to the party line. Now, the party line here is, those of you who are not very, very old, there would have been a line on the phone. AC's cousin Jenny is an operator. The party line is just that the phones were connected. So she could listen in on what everybody was saying to everybody else. If she was in the right place, she could do that. Weesit thinks that Banbury poisoned the tarts to kill Abner off. What about the other 199? Cummings asked. Did they think he wanted to polish them off too? Oh, it's too ridiculous. I'm speechless. I never before was so completely speechless. For several minutes, Dr. Cummings enlarged on his speechless state. It's absurd, the whole business, he finally finished up. Absurd, nonsensical, ridiculous, preposterous, and downright silly. And if you let them arrest Banbury, AC Mayo, I'll come over here and throw stones at your window. And that gives you, that's right at the beginning. That is AC Mayo or Phoebe Atwood Taylor periodically gives you moments like that are so entertaining to read, but they catch you up. They are not info dumps. They catch you up. They are natural. Dr. Cummings has just come off a night of tending to a whole bunch of people who've had partial arsenic poisoning. He's voluble and he wants to talk about it. AC Mayo's already thought about it a lot and is able to piece some things together right there in that scene in the way that feels natural. And also, Phoebe Atwood Taylor doesn't neglect to give her character's personality, which I've been sorely missing in the last few murder mysteries that I've been reading. So this did the trick. It really did the trick. Phoebe Atwood Taylor has a weakness as a mystery writer. I am noticing this as a weakness in even Golden Age murder mystery writers, which is that they've thought out the drama but they haven't always thought out the mechanics. The mechanics tend to flub at the end. So that you end up by saying, oh boy, was that good. And then half an hour later, when you're walking the dog, you think, yeah, but that was really, really good. But this part doesn't connect with that part, does it? The only way that it connects is if you're the writer and you want to connect it. It wouldn't connect on its own. And one particular incident happens here, a member of Mr. Banbury's family, that involves Mr. Banbury's family. One particular element of that happens here. But it feels natural. You will read right to the end and absolutely love it. I just had a ball. I just had a ball. And I was hoping, even this read through, I mean, with murder mysteries, I'm like all the rest of you. I tend to forget the exact details of what I've read because I read so many of these things. But I was remembering a lot by the time I was halfway through this thing. And I remembered I had the same reaction when I was rereading it that I had the first time I read it, which was rooting for Mr. Banbury. I was hoping that he would be exonerated, that he didn't end up being the bad guy. And once a second body is found, then police do get involved. Not just the local constable that Dr. Cummings has such a great fun time all throughout the book tormenting. He torments the local Barney Fife constable constantly throughout the book, and you're never tempted to feel sorry for the cop. But once there is a crime going on here, a major, serious crime, then serious cops from the big city come, and they're everywhere. They infest East Weasel. They just infest the town. One character jokes halfway in the book, oh no, it's later than that. She jokes that so-and-so's mother found a cop in her shower. She found a cop in the bathroom because they're everywhere. You open a closet and they're right there. They're watching all of us now. But it's not the cops who solve anything. It's not even the doctors who solve anything. It's AC Mayo. In the end, he's the one who solves things. And you never expect otherwise. And it was just what I needed. Just exactly what I needed. So I don't know. For March Mystery Madness, I'm going to pick a mystery later on today. I'm going to pick a mystery that I'll read tonight along with all the other stuff that I'm going to read tonight. And it's going to be a reread. And I haven't decided yet. I'm sort of leaving these things to the spur of the moment. Will it be something that I've reread so many times that I know it really well? Or will it be something I haven't reread in a long time? And will it involve cops or will it not? Those are the two main questions that I have to decide on. I'll figure it out tonight and I'll report back tomorrow. So that is March Mystery Madness. I'm gonna wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.